Hi everyone, I'm Bridget, and if you're like me, you're in the process of graduating from a master's degree as a licensed mental health counselor associate. And in order to do that, you have to pass the Counselor Preparation Comprehension Examination, or the CPCE. And I have a bit of test anxiety, and I know other people do as well. And so this is what happened to me on the day of the exam. And it sounds like this is pretty normal. So, the first thing is when you get there, you kind of feel like when it's all over, you should get an answer of whether you passed or not. But unfortunately, no two CACREP universities have the same passing grade. So, what you want to be able to do is have a decent score in each one of the 8 content areas. And if you haven't had a chance to go through each one of the 8 content areas, they're professional counseling orientation and ethical practice, social and cultural diversity, human growth and development, career development, counseling and helping relationships, group counseling and group work, assessment and testing, and research and program evaluation. So you go through, and when you're done, you get something that gives you your raw score. And it even says the score report is an unofficial score report and only represents your raw score. You have to wait a month and a half to find out if you've actually passed or not. So you want to make sure that you do pretty well in most of the areas. As you know, it's a 160 question test, but only 136 questions are actually scored on your test because they have a test bank for future tests. And because of that, there are 20 content areas, but you're going to get a max possible score of 17. So the lowest I got was an 11 out of 17. And the highest I got was a 15 out of 17 in the 8 areas. So going to the Pearson Testing Center it looked like a medical office building. And I parked. I made sure I was there plenty early. I not only arrived early, I didn't eat anything risky. So if I've never eaten it before, I didn't eat it on that day. And I wanted to make sure that there just wasn't anything that was going to cause a problem. So I made sure everything that I normally eat and I normally drink, because if you're like me, you have test anxiety, and it can be a little confusing on the day of. So you want to have 2 forms of ID, and they're very specific about the types of ID you need to have. So I brought my driver's license and my passport, and that was fine. I do know people who have been turned away from the test from not having the right stuff. So you want to make sure that you have the right stuff. The other thing that you want to make sure is go potty. You'll thank me for that later. When you go in, you sign in, they check to see who you are, that you look at the 2 forms of ID, they give you information, you agree to the information, and then you do a palm print. So I had used a lot of hand sanitizer that day, and as a result, my palm print didn't work too well. So something to note, don't use a lot of hand sanitizer that day because it does cause problems with the palm print. You do a left palm print, you do a right palm print, and then sometimes they just look at your IDs and let you in. So I was wearing glasses that day because sometimes I have trouble seeing because old eyes. And they put it on a special sensing machine. So don't be surprised if they ask you to empty your pockets, ask you to twirl around, ask you to kind of pat yourself down. They're just trying to make sure that you're not bringing in any extraneous materials or anything that could be perceived as cheating to the testing prep site. You go in through the door after you've done all this, and it's a testing bank of 10 to 15 spaces. There were a couple of people doing some kind of licensing exam for actuarials. There was somebody in there who was doing civil service exam. There was someone who was doing an architecture exam. So there are a whole bunch of different kinds of people. They'll have noise deafening earphones. Only use them if you have in fact worked in a clean room. If you're used to having some kind of ambient noise, that doesn't really work well. Same thing for the earplugs that they'll give you. Only if you've been working in a place that doesn't have any noise. Otherwise, that's really distracting. So I would say if you're used to listening with noise, canceling headphones, use those. But if that's not how you've been studying, don't use them. If you've been studying with earpods so that you can deafen the noise, then do that. But if you haven't done that, now is not the day to do that. You're given a Sharpie and you're given a laminated graph scratch paper, and they give you a couple of those. And what they'll say to you is use as much as you want. If you want to have another one, you can have another one, but you can't keep that work. I didn't use anywhere near the amount of laminated scratch paper that they used, but it was a little bit, I was used to writing with pen and paper, and I wasn't writing with pen and paper, and it's a Sharpie, so it's not like you can scratch it out. So just be aware of that. Just be aware that it's a different thing. Use your resources. They give you an opportunity to flag your questions. And again, I mentioned in one of my other videos, if you haven't seen that, check that out. You've got about 1.5 minutes for each one of the questions. So if you're getting a place that's stuck, flag the question. I found I answered the questions that I felt most confident about. I flagged everything else. Then I kind of went through the cycle again, looked at all the flagged ones and answered those. It took me about 2 hours. You're given 4 hours. I've had colleagues who have taken the whole time. I didn't have any more to answer. I didn't have any more knowledge. So it took me about 2 hours. Some people have taken the full time. Some people have taken much less time than me. If you want to take a break, you should know that that counts against your overall time. So if you're running out of time and you need a water, you might want to factor that into whether or not you really want to take that time out. So at the end, you raise your hand, they come out, they log you out of the computer, and they give you a one-pager. And the one-pager says whether or not you passed or whether or not you have any correct answers. So I was lucky. I did pretty well. I still don't know if I passed, but from what I've heard from other schools, anybody from a 70 to an 85 seems to be passing, and I got higher than that. So I was lucky. It'll give you your score, and it'll give you your max possible scores, and email your professors and let them know and be done with it. Do something nice for yourself. So this is what my CPCE exam, the day of the CPCE exam was like. I hope it's helpful to you. I'm rooting for you. Good luck.